Data puzzles are concise lessons that combine classroom-friendly data sets with the research-backed instructional practices of ambitious science teaching to support students in making sense of phenomena. Teachers across the country have used these resources in a variety of ways, some electing to use them as mini units, others embedding them into larger curricula. In this video series, we'll hear from middle school science teacher Erin Mayer as she talks about how she embeds a data puzzle into a larger unit she calls a learning expedition and what that looks like in her classroom.
So the data puzzle we worked with was called Tracing Carbon Through the Arctic Ecosystem, and it was part of a bigger learning expedition or unit called Changing Arctic. In our Changing Arctic learning expedition, our driving question was, how will melting Arctic sea ice affect Arctic organisms large and small?
And we learned recently that it's getting way warmer over the past few years, and so the ice is melting faster, and then things might die off.
The students, prior to experience the data puzzle, had an understanding that the ice was melting in the Arctic. And they had an understanding of some of the feeding relationships that exist amongst the organisms in the Arctic. But many of them walked into that learning expedition really just not really thinking about the importance of the smaller critters in the Arctic and how changing populations might impact the larger critters. So the Tracing Fats data puzzle was a really nice segue to get them to start thinking about the smaller things in an ecosystem. All data puzzles begin with an opening scenario. The purpose of an opening scenario in a data puzzle is really to provide context and provide purpose for what the kids are going to be engaging with and to bring in some relevancy. If you can get them to start making connections with their own life, they're more willing to think, they're more willing to be engaged, and they're more willing to actually put that effort out there to try to make those connections. So the opening scenario for this particular data puzzle was a short video clip called "You Are What You Eat." Prior to watching the video for the first time, I gave the kids two questions to think about as they listened to the video. The first one was, how might what you eat be related to your cells? And the second one was, could you tell the health of somebody just by looking at their cells? After the whole class engaged with the video, then the kids spoke in small groups and discussed those two questions. And then we had a short whole class conversation.
What can you stay healthy and fit?
Okay, so you're saying there's kind of a connection between what you eat and what you do and how you feel. And then transitioning to, okay, we're gonna do the same thing with the Arctic organisms. Ultimately, they're going to be looking at what's going on in the cells of these Arctic organisms, but they can connect that back to themselves. It turns out that scientists in a study had looked very carefully at the cells of Arctic organisms and were able to make some conclusions about what they ate.
The purpose of the "You Are What You Eat" opening scenario and the purpose of opening scenarios in all data puzzles is to connect students with science ideas in a context they're familiar with before connecting students to these same science ideas in a context they're less familiar with, that being the science investigation presented in the data puzzle. Students will explore the science investigation in more detail in an interactive reading.